BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and this is the wrap-up that I said in my last video I promised I was going to do on my days off. This is my second time filming it because I filmed it the other day, last Thursday, and because I wasn't completely prepared, I had got up to grab a book, and then the screen went in the screen, because I left the screen, it went black on me, and I think that's why, when I stop the video, nothing appears on the screen except for white. And it shows that it didn't record or whatever. I don't understand how it works. I'm not a tech-savvy person. I have to ask other people. Like, for instance, right now, I have an iPod, and I've been listening, and it's not working I was notified that my storage was full, and I listened to podcasts, and I'm thinking that could be potentially the problem. But I want to listen to podcasts, so why would I want to get rid of the podcast? So I'm trying to find ways around it. But anyway, yeah, so that's something I have to ask other people what to do or how to resolve the problem. And my parents know a little bit, but they're not super tech savvy. So, I mean, they know enough, but, they're not, I think it's the I think they're the baby boomers generation. I think that's what they'd be considered, not Gen X, but the baby boomers, so they know enough, but not. Anyway, so yeah, but I think I figured out what the problem is with this. Like, if I leave, I have to keep the screen from going black. So this is my wrap up for August and September, because I'm going to continue. I'm going to stick with the whole bi-monthly wrap ups. So a lot of these books, they're starting already. I don't have physical copies of it either, because I listened to it on audiobook via Libby, or I had given it was put in the donation pile, and I've taken it up to the Outpost bookshop already to be donated. So I don't have them, so some of them I won't be able to, and as I keep telling you guys, I don't know how to do the show the image on screen of the cover. Okay, so the first book is one of the books that I don't have a physical copy of anymore, and that is Galapagos by Kurt Vonnegut. This is my second Kurt Vonnegut book, and this was okay. I mean, I still like player piano. I keep wanting to say piano player, but it's player piano. But it was still good. I prefer the player piano plot more. But in this one, it's kind of a love letter to Charles Darwin and the Beagle, his voyage on the Beagle. And in case you don't know about that whole history, he was this man who took a voyage to the Galapagos Islands on this ship known as the Beagle, and he recorded in a diary all his observations of the creatures, of the animals on the island, particularly birds. There's a lot of talk about these particular birds, these golden finches, I think, and his observations, describing them. And he was the one who coined the term survival of the fittest. So he published all his notes in a book known as Origins of the Species, which I did attempt to read because it was on the Gilmore Girls reading list, but I couldn't do it, which I should have known better, because I'm not a science fiction person. I mean, I struggle with science fiction, let alone there's no way to read a nonfiction science book unless it was written in a way that was easy reading. Like today's nonfiction that are science related could probably be a little bit easier for me to get into. But, so anyway, this is a book, in this story, so it's told from the perspective of an omnipresent narrator. It's told the events have already happened, and this person is talking about what happened and making observations about it and thinking, if this hadn't happened, then maybe it wouldn't have turned out this way, kind of observations. So there is this cruise line, I don't remember what the ship was called, where they were going to do kind of a cruise type thing to the Galapagos Islands with a group of various different people, but the boat had crashed. something had happened. Something like, I don't know if it was actually, I don't know if it was a crash. I mean, it has been, I read this at the beginning of August, so I don't remember the exact reasons. But there was an accident on the boat. And a lot of people didn't, a lot of the passengers did not survive. It was mostly the women survived, and a lot of the men had died, but except for, I think, one guy, I think it was the captain, survived. And they all end up on an island. I don't know, I don't remember if it was the Galapagos or not. And they try to survive, and because there's only one man, and they think that they're going to be stuck on this island forever. And I think it was in the distant future, I think, when the story takes place. They have to get this guy to help them reproduce. So, I mean, this was an interesting idea. I didn't hate it. I was entertained by it. And it was interesting to think about, like, how you would handle this kind of situation. The one woman who kind of took charge of everybody, I had mixed feelings about her. Like, I thought she was kind of bitchy and mean. And I think she had this arrogance about her where she was like, she thought she was better than, because she's a woman and she's the superior, because the guy happened to be an ass. Like, yeah, he was an ass. I agree. He was a pig and was very rude, racist, sexist, all the isses. And but because the two of them were always butting heads, it kind of was like annoyed me, frustrated me. It's like, yeah, guys, why? And I don't think it was fair what she did just because he was an ass. What she does later so that they can, reproduce, make sure the human species survives. Like, she didn't ask permission from him, and he was an ass. He was a sexist pig, but I think she still didn't have the right to the choice that she made. And then it does do multiple generations. There's also queer representation. There is two women who are in love that get together. There's a lot of very tense relationships. And it was interesting to see how these people would survive, what they would resort to, how they would figure it all out. And there was this whole thing where this scientist, I want to say from Japan, had created this device that could interpret languages. And so there was that whole plot going on as well. So that kind of was an interesting thing about how this device worked and everything, and how it was a very flawed device, and just exploring that idea of technology and how that improve, do all technologies, can they improve things, improve society, and how we relate to each other, especially when we're from different countries and stuff like that. So it has some interesting ideas, but it just not, I just didn't, I liked the plot well enough, but it wasn't my favorite type of plot. But obviously I like well enough that I am going to continue to read another Kurt Vonnegut. I don't know which one, but I would like to at some point. Okay, so anyway, now the next one I'm going to talk about, I have a physical copy. And that is Virginia Woolf Through the Lighthouse, my first Virginia Woolf. And I was apprehensive about reading Virginia Woolf because I didn't know if I would be able to get into her writing style, because she is very stream of consciousness writing style, which can be very confusing because you are in the person's head. There's no separation. There's no narrator. You're just in their head the whole time. So there's no he said, she said kind of thing. There's no describing how someone says something or how someone does something. It's just all the person's thoughts the whole time. The whole book is written in their thoughts, like you're reading someone's diary. Or it's like if you projected the thoughts you have in your head out loud. It would be like you're reading those thoughts. And sometimes it can be very jarring, it can be very confusing for me and this was multi-perspective, so there were times where I didn't know whose perspective we were in. It took me a while to get into the story and get in the rhythm of it. It did help that it's, when, or at least for me, when reading a poem, I have to read it out loud for me to get into it and to really hear what it's about and what the messages, the themes are. So I have to read it out loud. So I feel it was the same with this. There are times when I had to start reading this out loud. I also feel like I'm reading it at certain times. I was home the whole time while reading this. And I feel like reading this while I'm traveling or at somewhere where there's a lot of distractions, that doesn't work. Because I can't pay attention to what I'm reading. I can't think about it because the noise is around me and it's hard for me to tune it out completely. And then sometimes people will interrupt me, depending on whose house I'm staying at, and there's a lot of background noise. So I need this when it's quiet and where there's not too many distractions. And I did, and I think that really helped. It helped me be able to get into the story. I mean, this is not the first stream of consciousness work I've read. I read Ali Smith, her book Autumn. I read that one and I liked it. I mean, it wasn't the best book ever, but I liked it. I had a good time with it. I was able to read it. So same thing with this. I don't know if I'll continue with Virginia Woolf. Who knows? But this is this English family. They're on vacation at a beach house on the Scottish coast, and it's a weekend when I want to say it's a day, but that I might be getting that mixed up with that other book, that other famous Virginia Woolf book about the woman who's planning the party and everything. Which now that the name of that one escapes me, but it's this family, the Ramsay family, and it's all about each one of them and their perspectives on their vacation, and including the youngest child, the youngest little boy who is desperate to go to this lighthouse, but he is told by both his mom and his dad that they can't go. They just don't have time for it. They can't fit it in their schedule, and he's really disappointed. And it's also about all their neighbors and their friends, observing them and spending time hanging out with them and what they think of them. And some of them are a little obsessed with them and fascinated by them. And that's basically what it is. There's really no plot per se. There's no conflict resolution kind of scenario. It's just their day-to-day their lives. And then the next part, it's divided into parts, is where they are now in life, where the Ramsays and their neighbors and friends are. And when they come back to this place this summer, this place on the Scottish coast. And it's a very bittersweet story. It's a little, it's very sad, and there are characters that I definitely have mixed feelings. I couldn't stand Mr. Ramsay. I liked Miss Ramsay. Mr. Ramsay was kind of arrogant. He was a jerk to his, he was kind of insensitive to his son, the little boy who wanted to go to the lighthouse. And I almost think, of course, this is the time period, so maybe that's why Ms. Ramsay seemed a little passive. And I wish she would stand up for herself against her husband. Not that he did anything really, really bad. He was just kind of a condescending jerk, from what I remember. And I also, I like some of their friends. There's this one girl who was fascinated by both Mr. and Miss Ramsay, if I remember correctly. I don't remember her name. Again, this was in the beginning of August, so I don't remember a lot of the character names. And then there was one character that was this, I don't know if he was a teacher or something, or he was just a regular guy with, or maybe, no, I think he was a poet. Yeah, he was a poet. And he was, obsessed with art and what he considered good literature, intellectual literature. And I kind of mixed feelings about him because I think he is condescending to, and says that women can't write poetry, which that I want to smack him. But I kind of understand the frustration wanting to talk about, have these deeper conversations with about certain works of literature and poetry. Like, understand the frustration wanting to talk to people, and there are most people that just are not aware of that stuff, don't understand it, or struggle with it, or just aren't interested in it, and you want to talk about it and feeling alone. I get that frustration, but no need to be an ass about it and be a condescending jerk and assume, oh, you're not smart enough for this. Like, that's how he treated the woman. I wish I could remember her name, but she's the one I mentioned the one I mentioned that was obsessed with both Mr. and Miss Ramsey. And I think it's World War I, does come into play in this story. At least it's kind of a bittersweet story. But beautifully written. It reads like, once you can understand what is going on. And I mean, Virginia Woolf definitely knows how to craft a sentence. But it's a struggle reading stream of consciousness. That's why I'm still I'm determined to I am still determined. And I know most people would probably say, oh, just give it up, let it go, send it to someone else, the book Ulysses. But I am still determined because I think that has some kind of story. And granted, it helps that this one was short. This one was a lot shorter. But so it wasn't bad. It was, it's pretty good. Okay, and then we have, another one that I don't have a copy of anymore. I thought I still had them, but I have already taken them to the Outpost bookshop. But that is The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. This is a mystery, a detective story, and probably more of a detective story than The Woman in White was. But in this one, you have multiple narrators like The Woman in White. You have our main narrator is Betteredge. I don't know why I didn't think about his name when I last attempted to do this video, but I couldn't think of his name. Betteredge, which I'm surprised because it's such a unique name. Betteredge, he is our first narrator, and he's telling us the history of the Moonstone, which is the titular object. And he says that this Englishman who had gone to the Moonstone is a jewel that's found in India, and this Englishman had gone to India and stole the Moonstone from the Indians and brought it back to England and was intending to give it away to his niece as a birthday gift. But his sister and him have not spoken, so he wasn't invited to his niece's birthday party, but his son was invited. So he goes and is able to give her the Moonstone. And she is really excited to receive it. She wants to wear it. But her mom is like, we should keep that somewhere. Where are you going to put it? And, she's kind of bugging her about it, insisting, you have to keep that locked up. And she's, very dismissive of her mother's concerns and is like, oh, there's no way anyone would steal this. Not in our house. Well, it turns out the next morning after the party, it does get stolen. And they have to hire a detective to figure out what happened to the Moonstone. And this detective does not do a good job coming to the bottom of this mystery. And the cousin who gave her the jewel, he decides to hire a detective that works for his father, and he is a little better at the job and at figuring it out. And he even has suspicions, but he's not sure if his suspicions are correct about the daughter in this jewel. And it's basically figuring out what happened to the Moonstone, and trying to figure out solving the mystery of the Moonstone. And there is this was fun. I actually like this one better because I like that it was an actual more of a mystery, which is funny considering I'm not the biggest fan of detective stories. I mean, I'm not totally writing them off. It's just sometimes they can get repetitive and boring because they're like, you recognize when it's the tropes, getting the same tropes over and over again. Kind of don't excite me. But this was still kind of fun. But this was kind of fun. It was interesting to get all these different perspectives. There was one woman, was it Miss Clack? Miss Clack. She was a friend of the two, of the mother and daughter, and she found that the mother was very ill, and this Miss Clack she's a very religious, very spirited woman, believes and has strong morals, even has a group of women that are all about morality, and tries to give her friend this book that will teach her that she thinks will help her of her ills and all that, and the woman is like, no, I don't want to read anything that's going to tax me and stress me out, so no, I'm sorry. And it seemed like Miss Clack is letting it go, but then she proceeds, which I think was really funny. She proceeds to leave all these books all around her space where she'll accidentally come across the books. And this woman is like, you're not helping yourself, lady. She's going to get annoyed by you. You're going to make yourself very annoying. And, great for you. You want to spread your morality and help people, and you're so good and think yourself so. But she's kind of arrogant about it, so it's kind of a mix of amusing and annoying at the same time. This character, she was the most interesting character, like in her ways of thinking, because it's from their perspective, so we are in her head, and she is just so sure of herself. She's in the right because she's such a good moral person, and it was just really funny, and just like she just was very aggressive about it, and I can understand why not everyone will respond well to her. But I was delighted by her character. She was really funny. And then, but also there is a love story. There's a bit of a love story between the girl who got the moonstone and the cousin who brought it to her. And yes, cousins. It was normal back then for cousins to marry. I guess it was more acceptable than siblings. Like, it was acceptable to marry cousins, unlike siblings. And so you just gotta go with it, and when you have to accept when you read stories from this time period that cousins are gonna fall in love. It was just how it was. And now we know it's kind of weird and gross, and it's still incest, but for some reason I guess they were like, well, they're cousins, so it's not incest, it's the same. But so yeah, and then she has two cousins that want to marry her, and one of them was just very sleazy, and I didn't trust him. He was a bit of a ladies' man. Like, he pretended to be all Mr. Charmer, and I did not like him. And actually, Miss Clack liked him, though, because he was part of her group. He was the only man. He put on the show of, I'm a good moral person. But he was going out at night, drinking, and, spending time with women and all that. Like, I did not trust him. And I almost felt bad for Miss Clack because she was so naive. And it was kind of cool seeing how they figured it all out and interpret everything. And there were a lot of interesting characters that, like I said, with Miss Clack, it did slow the narrative down a little bit with her perspective, because she was often getting off topic. And I kept wondering, what does this have to do with the mystery? Why do we need to know all this information? But I think it's to show who she is as a person. You really get to know these characters and who they are. And in real life, yeah, people will go off topic. I go off on tangents in these videos, as I've just done. And so I feel like she's a realistic character. Even if she's annoying, even if you don't love her character, I feel like she's realistic. The romance was kind of sweet. I definitely felt bad for the cousin. That was the actually good, more deserving one. That gave her the moonstone. I felt bad for him. I liked him. He was actually a generally good guy, and But at one point, he does look bad in the story. At one point, he does start to look bad, and you know, and you can't blame people for being a little suspicious of him because it does not look good. There is, of course, some racism towards Indians. I'm like, right away, the cousin does. He naturally assumes that the Indians, granted, is from their country, and you'll blame him for wanting to take it back. And he assumes that because there's these 3 Indians that are lurking, and he automatically assumes, oh, they broke in and took the diamond, and took the stone and everything, and then it turns out no, they didn't take. They had already been arrested for something else. They were kind of loitering around, pretending to be. I think they were pretending to be performers. They were. So they did seem like. I can see from the English perspective, they probably were suspicious. And I knew that was gonna, like, come into play in the story, especially because that's where the Moonstone is from, India. But like I said, they were already arrested for a different reason, so it turns out not to be them. So, but yeah, that mentality that these English people have of them isn't great. But, that's sadly how it was back then, So there it is so, yeah, that's... But I thought it was a good, entertaining, engaging story, and it is shorter than The Woman in White, so if you want something shorter than The Woman in White, it's not super short, it's still a chunky book, but it's shorter than The Woman in White. Okay, and next is, I have been meaning to read this and I finally did, and I used the whole, one of the podcasts that I listened to, they did a challenge where they would read the oldest books on their TBR, and this series was the oldest. And then there's Brandon Sanderson's Alloy of Law, the first book in the Wax and Wayne series, Mistborn Era 2. So this one is a little different from that other series where it's kind of a Western mystery detective story. Again, detective story. But, with detective stories, if it's in a different, a mini, a fantasy or a medieval, historical fiction format, there's a better chance of me getting into it. I mean, and I'm talking before the, I don't think film noir, not my thing. But no, I mean, I did try Sherlock Holmes. I know that is Victorian, but I got bored with that series after a while, so. But anyway, in this one we have, Waxum he is a son of he is a nobleman, but he kind of in the beginning of the book, you find out that he had left the city, Elendil, and is gone into the Roughs to live there and be the lawman there, which is where he had met Wayne. And I think that's where he met. And so he is forced to come back and pick up his inheritance after his father died and take his father's place in business. Has to find a wife and is trying not to get involved in the law in the city, or use his Mistborn powers, his allomancy. But and he's definitely struggling with it because in the prologue he does use it, but then he realizes, I gotta stop doing this. I gotta just act like a normal nobleman and live a normal life. But Wayne shows up with a mystery. These people are getting murdered, if I remember correctly. I struggle remembering the plot of this one, even in, when I tried to film this wrap up a couple days ago, and I still don't remember. Which, in hindsight, I probably should have looked that up before, since I had to know enough to redo this, but I didn't think about it. I was more distracted by other things. But anyway, and they have to go on a case. I don't know if it's murder, but actually people are getting kidnapped. And they suspect that those people might be related to some of the rich families, or that they may have allomancy. And it's, oh, and there's this vanishing train or something that's involved, and this mysterious, so there's all this, like, people believe this, oh, phantom, they call it, I think they call it a phantom train, a phantom car or something that they're trying to find that is involved. There's also a subplot of him finding a fiance, and her cousin, who is, she's a she studied criminal law in college and wants to get into criminal investigation, and she has followed the exploits of Wax and Wayne for years. She's obsessed and knows everything about them and helps them solve this case. But it's kind of interesting because Wax and Wayne, he's trying to walk away from this life, but he just can't help himself. He's kind of addicted to it. And he's also in a position where he has the privilege, but also people think he brings chaos and nothing but trouble. But they also realize they need him. In the second book, which I'll talk about a little later, because I read in September, that explores that whole theme a little bit more than this one does. And it was kind of this was an adventure story. It was fun, and and of course, I recommend you reading Mistborn first, the original trilogy, if you haven't yet, because it explains allomancy and fruit chemy and all the magic system, which when Brandon Sanderson, of course, assumes that you've already read that trilogy, the Mistborn, and have, he doesn't take the time to explain the different powers, he just throws you in there, and you kind of have to figure it out as you're reading, unless you've already read the first trilogy. But I love Wax and Wayne's dynamic. They're really fun and, snarky with each other. They really care about each other and really know each other very well. I love Wayne's, obsession with hats. He has to, or particularly his hat. He has to have his hat because it's a good hat, and no other hat will work for him. I like that little quirk about him. He's also really good at disguising himself, and it's important to get the accent right to really have a good disguise. And the guy would come in handy. I also, the dynamic between him and his fiance's cousin, that's really interesting because she kind of is infatuated with Wax, has a little bit crush on him, and she, of course, has to realize that there's a difference between the legend and the real person. And I think she has to discover that throughout the story as she gets to know him, because she constantly says comments about, you guys aren't nothing like I expected. And because the way, they're just kind of guys who just goof around and screw up and can sometimes make a mess and make trouble for people. But it's such a fun dynamic to read about. I love their dynamic. It's so fun and playful and entertaining. Also, it really, it's not as philosophical as the first Mistborn era trilogy, but it does kind of get into the discussion of the privileged class, the upper class versus, the poor people, and how they run things. They're the government, but they're not always fair. They can be very selfish and greedy and take advantage of people. And how Wax is kind of in the middle when it comes to that. He's not sure on what side he's on. But he kind of tries to balance both, and I feel like that's really hard to do, to see on both sides, because people, no matter what, you either are on their side or on their side, and people just cannot let you play both sides. It's not possible. They won't let you. And of course, when you are in the, have a certain role, there are certain roles that it will not work at all. because you have to make a choice. And he has to choose whose side he's on. And it's, you know, so there's a little bit of, there is deeper stuff in this. Despite that it's very fast-paced, adventure, and, you know, mystery and all that. So yeah, I had a good time. This was really fun. I like it. I did read, like I said, I read the second book. And I will talk about that one in a little bit. So that is Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. Okay, and then the next one is, that I actually have a physical copy, is Pompeii by Robert Harris. This is my first Robert Harris book. And as the title implies, this takes place during Pompeii. In Pompeii. Well, not exactly Pompeii. It starts out in a different city that is near Pompeii. Like, you know how you have towns, you have the county, and then you have the towns. You have one, you know, it's like, I mean, I don't know what would be considered the county, but you have these different little pockets of towns, and you have the big one, and then all the little ones surrounding it. And one of the smaller ones, there is something wrong with the water system. And this aqueduct, this guy who works on aqueducts, the water system, the waterworks, Marcus Attilius, has been summoned. And it turns out, you find out that the previous guy who did the job, he's gone missing. No one knows what happened to him. That's why they had to replace him with Marcus Attilius. And he tries to figure out what's going on. But the people that work for him, people that, you know, the people that trying to run things, keep an eye on things, they are very difficult with him. They think he doesn't know what he's talking about. They say, everything's fine, this water system is fine, you're wasting your time. They're very dismissive, they just give him a hard time. They just do not make things easy for him. And he finds out that one of the noblemen has made his own man-made lake with fish and everything. And that might have... And one of this guy, and he might be part of the problem. And this guy, his fish are all dead for some reason. And he blames one of his slaves for killing all the fish, because this was the slave who was supposed to take care of the fish and feed the fish. So he blames him and sacrifices him to his fish. And Marcus Attilius finds out that there is something wrong. And as he's doing this, Attilius finds out that there is something wrong with the water. And it smells like sulfur. So he tries to stop it. But he doesn't get there on time, and the slave does get killed. And he figures it out. And he's determined to figure out where the problem is. But it might be a lot closer there. The problem might have something to do with a certain volcano that they supposedly thought was dormant. So it's really interesting to read a book where you as the reader, where that takes place around an event in history, where you know how it's going to turn out. You know that there's going to be this big disaster, this big event is going to happen. You as the reader have this knowledge, and seeing these people and knowing what's going to happen to them. And wondering, and of course, like, if they're not real people, there are some people that you don't know what's going to happen, if they're going to survive or not. Or if they are even able to survive. Now, that is one of the criticisms I read about this book, was that the way it turned out for some of the characters, they felt like it was unrealistic. But to me, so it was just really interesting, very weird, because it's like, you start to kind of like these characters, and you're like, you might be dying. You might not survive. I don't know how you're gonna survive. And it was very there, especially because Robert Harris does kind of introduce a bit of a love story. I mean, he does focus only on the conflict, which is the water system and the knowing that the threat of Pompeii is the Mount Vesuvius erupting. I keep wanting to say Pompeii, but Pompeii is the city. The eruption of Vesuvius is going to happen any day now. Knowing that, he does focus on that, but there is a little bit of a romance. Now the problem with that is the romance, because the characters don't really get to spend any time together. It felt very insta-lovey, which, I mean, I appreciate that the book, that Harris focused on the actual conflict, the actual problem of the water system, but in how someone who did this job could become very important in this community, and how he was being used by the guy at the man-made lake and other people. But if you're going to introduce a romance, I feel like he should have given the romance a little more time, like have the characters somehow spend time with each other. But they didn't. Like, in fact, the woman was often under house arrest, or was kind of locked up in her father's house a lot of the time. And the romance felt a little lacking, which I'm sure for people that aren't into romance at all, that's fine. But like I said before, I don't read romance where romance is the main conflict. Especially, but when it's in there, I want it to be a good romance. I want it to be believable. I want it to be I want there to be time spent where you can believe this romance is possible. And I felt like this one just kind of, I knew it was coming, because when she introduced the woman, and he talks about how pretty she is, then it's like, and him being shy around her is like, yeah, okay, there's gonna be romance. But I mean, I am, like I said, mixed feelings, because they didn't develop the romance enough, but they also didn't let it take over the story. It was just a background plot point, and that is both good and bad, I think. Also, I love that Robert Harris includes Pliny the Elder, Pliny the Younger. That was really fun. Pliny the Elder was a really fun character. He was very snarky and sassy, but kind of like he just was oblivious. At the same time, he was so focused on his writing. He even had his servant, I don't know, it was Pliny the Younger or a servant tagging along so he could record what was happening. And I'm like, considering that disaster strike and that's what you're worried about? Now, I don't know how accurate that is. I'd be kind of curious if that's historically accurate, if Pliny was there or observed it. I'm kind of curious if that is historically accurate, that he was there, or did Robert Harris just decide to throw that in there to have an interesting character from history. And like I said, I don't know if he's the only one I know for sure was a real person. I don't know him and his son, but I don't know if any of the other characters were real people. Obviously, Marcus Aurelius, the water guy, was not a real person. And now, the bad guy, our antagonist, he was kind of a cartoon villain. You knew right away that he's the villain. He's the antagonist. I mean, ultimately, this book was not long enough. Which is funny. On the one hand, it's not long enough, but I did get through it quickly, and I appreciate that. And it's just so funny that for me, when I'm like, on the one hand, I like when these books are shorter, I can get through them, but at the same time, that's a hindrance on the book, because then the author does not really spend a lot of time with the characters. And granted, this is a very fast pace, because he's going on a time limit, because we're getting up to the volcanic eruption. We are waiting for that moment, and you're just holding your breath, wondering, oh my god, when's gonna happen? Who's gonna die? Are any of them gonna make it? Just asking all these questions. You're just so antsy, and our antagonist has some grand plans, and I'm just like, I don't know if these plans are gonna happen. You might not be alive in a few weeks. In a few days, you might be nothing but ash, like a statue. But I think it's a good. I agree, like I agree with Steve Don. He did a video, like historical fiction for beginners, and I agree. I think this is a great beginners historical fiction reading, and also it's. I don't understand the science, but I do appreciate that at the top of every page, every beginning chapter, there is a little brief, like, quote or explanation of the science behind volcanoes. And so I think it's really informative as well. I mean, also the cover, this cover is really cool. Like, it looks, it's like there's a crack and pretty orange color. So I like that picture in the corner. But yeah, it was, it was very fast paced. It was okay. I had fun with it. This was fun. I still had fun. I had my criticisms, but it was fun. It was a fun historical fiction read about, and it was definitely easier to read than some of those non-fictions about Rome, because, sometimes those can be tedious. Okay, so I have one more book. So this one I only read like the last part of this book. This one, and I read most of it last year, I think. Or I should say in 2023. Or no, I guess in 2024. And that is Blackwater by Michael McDowell. I've been reading this on Kindle. It's a long book because it's basically 6 novellas in one big book. Like, it was originally published as 6 separate novellas, and then a special version of it came out where all the books are one big huge book. So it's like over 800 pages. So this is a Southern Gothic story with a little bit of a horror element. So it takes place in Perdido, Alabama. This is a town, a very southern town, very stuck in its ways, and you have the book starts where there was a flood, a big rainstorm, and the whole town got flooded, and all the people are hiding out in the local church. And you have our main family, the Caskies, and Oscar is like, Mary Love is the matriarch. You have her son Oscar and his sister, whom they call Sister. Yes, I'm so glad I remember the names. And Oscar, along with his servant, his black servant, by the way, it's historical. It takes place it starts in the early 1900s and takes you all the way up, I think, to the 60s. I think the 60s. So this is in the South. So unfortunately, there are black slaves, or servants, and they took a boat because it's so flooded. They have to go throughout the whole town. They gotta get in a boat, and they get to the local hotel where there's this mysterious woman waiting there. And Oscar is immediately spinning with her. He offers to help her out, and she reveals herself to be Eleanor. Her name is Eleanor, and she has basically been waiting for Oscar. And Mary Love and Sister are wary of her. They don't trust her. They think there's something about her that is not right, especially Mary Love. But Oscar ends up falling in love with her, and she with him, and they get married. And it's a multi-generational story about these family, and Mary Love and Eleanor butting heads for being the head of the family. And here's the horror element. So the horror element is that Eleanor is actually a sea creature, like kind of a monster from the Black Lagoon type creature. But she is in hiding, but she has decided to take human form, find a mate, and just live as a human. And there's this whole issue of that. She comes from the Perdido River, the Blackwater River that flows between the towns in Alabama. And they are worried about another flood, and they basically dam it up, which she does not like that. She does not want, she tries to stop them from damming it up. But her method to getting involved in the community and getting involved, and manipulating Oscar, getting him on her side, because he's kind of put between, he's in between Mary Love and Eleanor. They're constantly pulling at him, and it's a very matriarchal society community. It's the women run the community. The women, particularly this family, the women are, Mary Love is the one in charge. Now I know what happened to Oscar's dad, but Oscar and sister's dad, but Mary Love is the one in charge. So it's a very matriarchal society. And it's just such a, and it's funny though that you have this element of Eleanor being a sea creature, and there are some creepy moments sprinkled throughout the story. I mean, and there's points where people get killed, but it's not that part of it is like, you almost forget about that part until it happens, and it's like, oh, right, I forgot. We're dealing with, this is a horror book. Because this is more of a family drama, a family saga. You see the lives of these people, and it's a multi-generational story. You go from, the children of Oscar and Eleanor, and you also get sister gets married at one point. There's other people, part of their family, that join their family, and one of their family, Mary Love's brother James, his wife comes into the picture, and her sister comes into the picture at one point, and she has kids. So it's all these generations throughout, this up until the 60s. And it's just about their lives and trying to sort of get by in the world. World War II happens. They all have to deal with all this stuff going on. Eleanor and Mary Love are always fighting for power over the family, and it's such an interesting, entertaining story, and I think I would love to see it adapted. Love to see this story play out in a mini-series or like a limited series show, so they really could dive deep. I mean, but maybe all they need to do is a limited series, a mini-series, because, I mean, I think in a mini-series you still kind of have to take out things. You can't include everything. So I think a limited series, you can include everything, but then again, a mini-series could cover the whole story, I think. But yeah, just seeing the lives of these people, and, and also the Old South and their way of thinking, and like I said, it's historical because you go from the early 1900s, and you start in the early 1900s, and it was such an engaging story, and you really got to know this family, and you really wanted to spend time with them. And I think another person who really does a good job covering this is Mike from Mike's Book Reviews. So if I remember, I will link his video on this story, because I think he does a really good job talking about the book and everything, because he's the one who introduced me to the book. Him talking about it got me intrigued by it, because I'm always trying to look for more horror and go beyond Stephen King, and he's one of the ones who's helped me out a lot with that. So like I said, I'm going to mention, if I remember, I will have to share the link to his video. And also his channel. I think his channel is great, especially if you're a fantasy horror fan, Okay, so that was the last book I read in August. Now we are on to September. So again, the first book is not one that I have a physical copy of. I listened to it in an audiobook, and that is The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Spiegel. So this was one I had seen the adaptation, the animated adaptation, when my friend Terry had visited during one of the summers she visited. We were able to watch the animated movie via YouTube TV. And it was cute. It was fun. It's a fairy tale. I think the animated, I think the adaptation did a pretty good job. But it's not a super long story. I mean, there was still stuff that I think, if I remember correctly, there were characters that weren't in the story, that weren't in the adaptation, that were in the novel. But this is in this fairy tale world where this unicorn discovers that she is the last of her kind after overhearing a conversation between some travelers. So she goes in search of her own kind and what happened to them. And along the way, she gets kidnapped by this witch who has a carnival of creatures, although not all of the creatures are what they seem. And she finds out while she's there that this mysterious Red Bull has lured her kind, all the unicorns, away and is holding them prisoners. And this Red Bull works for this King Haggard. So she's hoping to find a way to escape and save her kind. And she ends up getting help from this very incompetent wizard named Schmendrick, who I think he's immortal, but he's really a terrible magician. And they escape to go, and they go on this quest together. But along the way, they also come across a group of bandits who have this woman with them who is their cook and their clean and is the female partner to the guy who's in charge of the bandits. But she's not happy. She's always wanted to see a unicorn since she's a little girl. And she falls in love with this unicorn. And after they trick the bandits with illusions of Robin Hood and his merry men, they're able to eventually escape. And this woman, Molly Grew, joins them also on their quest. And they do eventually get to King Haggard's kingdom, but they find out it's cursed. And that the prince is not a great prince. And along the way, the unicorn does get to save her because the Red Bull crosses paths with them. And to save the unicorn from the Red Bull, Schmendrick accidentally turns her into a human woman, which she's not happy about. She is miserable, but she ends up falling in love with the prince. The prince and her end up falling in love. And this is just such a bittersweet but beautiful story. I think it is still warm and cozy, and it's something you would tell around a campfire to children, or you would tell your kids when putting them to bed. This kind of story, and it's fun. It's a little bit of an adventure, a quest, but there's also a sadness to a melancholiness because she is the last of her kind, and the tragedy of that, and her trying to find them. It's such a beautiful story. I did do a separate review of this, so I'm probably repeating myself. So I'm gonna finish up. I'm gonna end this thought for now. It's a very good story, and it's not super long. I know that there are some people just can't read children's literature, but I think even I don't always get into children's books. You gotta get something where I could be motivated to read and get me in the right mood for it. But yeah, it's very wholesome and heartwarming, but also very tragic and just I think it's a great story. So now we have another historical fiction, Catherine of Aragon, the True Queen by Alison Weir. So if you're familiar with Henry VIII and his 6 wives, whether you've read books, seen the movie The Honor Bowling Girl, which is based on the book by Philippa Gregory, or you've seen the musical 6, this Catherine Catalina was his first wife. She came from Spain, and although she was actually engaged to Arthur, his older brother, but then Arthur died of TB, and she ends up marrying Henry, who was considerably younger than her. But he was of legal age to get married when they married. And it's about their marriage, their relationship, and how she kind of fell in love with him. And he was very passionate about her, but then it fell apart. And especially because she couldn't give him children. She only gave him one. She gave him one daughter, but she couldn't give him a son. She kept having stillborns. And her story is just very tragic. And it's just her struggles to try to keep Henry happy and to keep her child, and kind of caught between, in the beginning she's very much caught between her father and Henry's father, Henry VII and King Ferdinand, and how Ferdinand won't pay him the dowry, keeps delaying paying him the dowry. And you do find out later that Ferdinand did not trust Henry VII, and Henry did not trust him, and was like, well, if you're not going to pay me, then I'm going to have a backup wife for my son. And, you know, she was just caught in the middle. She's just this young woman who's trying to do the best she can to survive and to be a good leader. And just, like, except that she's in this new country and has this new culture, and just trying to, and taking care of her servants, the people that work for her, because they are also homesick. And she's also very naive. Like, at one point she has the confessor who is like she's told multiple times that you can't trust him, that he's kind of shady, but she didn't believe him. You know, she didn't believe people, and was like, he's my confessor, I trust him. And I was suspicious about this guy the whole time. You know, I was like, you know, I don't know, because a lot of, you know, unfortunately, there are a lot of religious figures back then who were very greedy and very selfish and had ill motives, took advantage of people, hiding behind their role as a religious figure to disguise their ill intentions. I mean, there are some that are generally good people, just very moral, have strong moral compass, like Thomas More, which he shows up in this book at one point. I think I did do a review for this one, I think. But anyway, this is just, it's very tragic because her relationship with Henry was so beautiful in the beginning, so filled with passion, and then just really sours as the story progresses. And then, of course, Anne shows up, which I do have the book, Anne's book, A King's Obsession. I got that author book, so this was just so good. So, such a sad story, but so good. And Alison Weir is an historian, so I think this might potentially be more, more accurate, potentially, than the other one. I mean, she did take liberties and change things, because let's face it, historical fiction, you gotta, I mean, sometimes history can be really engaging and interesting, but sometimes certain things just do not work in fiction. You know, sometimes the real history is not as interesting and isn't as engaging, and you have to tweak some things. And sometimes it doesn't always work. So, I mean, that's a sad fact of life. Like, some history doesn't always work in entertainment. Okay, and then we have... Okay, so this is my next one that I don't have a copy of because I listened to it on Libby, and that is Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. This one I have mixed feelings. I think it was first of all, the narrator was the narrator for the Last Unicorn was pretty good. Her name was Orla Cassidy or something like that. Forgive me, but I liked her voice. And the narrator for Heart of Darkness at first was kind of boring, but then as the story progressed, he gave more to the character, our narrator. But this guy, Marlowe, he is on a steamer ship to the Congo, and when he gets there, he hears about this mysterious guy named Kurtz, who is just really, everyone loves him, everyone worships him. He's a god, he's seen as a god. He is in the ivory trade, and even the natives really love this guy. And Marlowe is so curious about him, wants to meet him. He doesn't meet him until the end, though. And it's basically about his time in the Congo and interacting with the natives, and until eventually he meets Kurtz and things don't turn out as he expected. I mean, it was this intriguing story, and it's the darkness in humans, in man, and how people can think that they're good and they're the savior, but then they're really not. They're just trying to control things, and they just automatically think they're superior to, and it's like very much a commentary on colonization and everything. And there is a question of was Conrad defending colonization or not? Because the natives characters, the black characters, the natives, there was no one that actually stood out. Like, they kind of merged together, they blended together, and there was no individual personalities. None of them really. There wasn't one character that was part of the group that represented the group that had a personality, which was kind of disappointing. And I think someone could do a story where a retelling of Heart of Darkness where it's from the perspective of one of the native peoples of the Congo, and give them an individual personality and desires, like flesh them out, desires and wants, and have opinions on this whole situation. I do think that it was interesting commentary on how people become obsessed with someone and glorify them and think they're so brilliant and they're so great and I can't compare to them. And how, like, you wonder, is that person really as great as you think he is, or are they just really good at winning you over and manipulating things to make themselves look brilliant? And it's funny because, like, you hear so much about this guy, and then but things, when Marlowe finally meets this guy, he doesn't get as much time with him. Like, there's, he's talked about a lot, but he's barely on the page. We don't really get enough time with his character to really form an opinion on him, except for the people, like, I mean, you immediately see, I think immediately realize he's an asshole. He thinks he's the white savior. Like, the fact that he sees himself as a god and superior to these people is just, to me, that's just messed up. But it was interesting food for thought. Like, and it's, one of those classics where you feel like you should at least try it out, give it a shot before you dismiss it. But then, I mean, maybe you might hear enough about it and they're like, no, I don't even want to bother with it. I have no interest in it. I mean, like, I was hesitant, but I'm glad at least I can say I read it and I can form my opinion on it. And it's just like, I'm probably never going to read it again. Okay, so then we have one of the most I absolutely love, and that is The Star and Its Strange Moon by Constance Sayers. This is the same woman who wrote A Witch in Time, and she also has another book, The Ladies of the Secret Circus. Most people, I think, know A Witch in Time. So in this story, we have two timelines. We have one in 1968. This woman named Gemma Turner. She's an actress from the 60s. She's known for doing beach movies. She was very popular, but she tries to branch out, but it doesn't go out. It doesn't turn out well for her. And then her manager gets her a meeting with this French director, Thierry Veldon. I don't know French, so I don't know if I'm saying his name right or not. And he's doing his own version of a horror movie, particularly vampire stories. And she goes to France, and she does get the part, and she goes there, and no one really, they're all like, oh, is the American, and they're very dismissive of her, they don't take her seriously, and they don't want to deal with her. In fact, she finds out that she was replaced Thierry Veldon's wife, his second wife, who was going to play her part, and just her part, Giselle. So there's some tension there between them. It's shaky. And she also finds out that, so Thierry Veldon lured her in by promising, because she revealed to him that she was interested in becoming a writer. And he offered to let her see his script and work on it with him, to be his partner. But then she gets there and finds out he's not interested in her writing. He's very dismissive of her and her work. And he reveals to her, he pulls her aside, and tells her that, oh, I'm sorry, but I'm not really interested in your writing, and reveals that he has cancer, he is dying, so he has to do this. This has to be his work, his magnum opus. No one else should be involved in this except for him. He's the one in charge, and this has to be his masterpiece. But the script is terrible. She has realized after reading it, and this is a guy who's never seen a horror film in his life, so he doesn't know how it all works. But she does it anyway to get her career back on track. But during her 9th day of shooting, she disappears, and the director and everyone, her agent, no one knows what happened to her. In fact, they think she ran out and left the film and everything. So in fact, they have the guy's wife replace her, and you find out that actually she has disappeared into the world of the film and has to live out this movie. So meanwhile, in the modern day, starting in the early 90s, we are introduced to Christopher Kent, who's this young boy who, it's him and his mom. His mom is a singer, and his mom, they travel, and when they get to this one hotel that's movie themed, there's all these pictures of these famous actors, and there's one of Gemma, and his mom has this visceral reaction to her, and she ends up dying that day. She is also someone who, takes pills and drugs and alcohol and stuff, and has lost her mind, essentially. And he ends up living with his aunt and uncle and cousins, goes to film school because he becomes obsessed with Gemma Turner and finding out what happened to her. And being in the world of Hollywood indirectly, he gets interested in film. He gets a girlfriend who is also a filmmaker and whose dad works on one of those cop shows like CSI or Law and Order or something. And he finds out he finds out some information about Gemma. He finds out that the movie that she made when she disappeared, they constantly show it every 10 years. But there's this whole hush-hush about it, this whole ceremony and everything, and you can't talk about it with anyone, and it kind of has a weird effect on people. So they get tickets, go see this movie, and both have really visceral reactions to it. He becomes even more obsessed with her in this movie, while his girlfriend doesn't even want to deal with it. It has a weird melancholy effect on her, and it has the same effect on all of them. And he finds a secret group of people that are trying to figure out what happened to Gemma and trying to understand this movie and everything. He becomes really just obsessed. And this was such a fun ride, so intriguing, I love books about old Hollywood, like stories that include old Hollywood from like the 40s or the 60s or all the different, it's so much fun to read and see this world. And Gemma is such a sweet person, but she's very tough. Christopher I just wanted to take care of the guy. I felt for him and wanted to help him out, wanted people. And I think he might have been autistic. I'm not entirely sure. I'm always obsessed with, now, like, I'm hyper aware of autism traits and thinking that people have certain traits. I'm like, is this autism or am I just projecting? Because, there are traits that make me wonder if he might be autistic, but I don't know. So I'm not an expert. I feel like I'm seeing it a lot, where characters that they have traits that might be autism, but I might just be reaching or whatever, and I might just be assuming anything. So don't take my word for it. I'm not an expert. I don't know what Constance Sayers' intentions were with the character, but there are things about him that made me, because he could just be a regular guy who's obsessed with film and obsessed with the woman, but there are things where, like, there's a scene where he's talking with his cousins and these girls. He does a double date with his cousin, with this woman he's really interested in, and she has her sisters in town, so Christopher helps his cousin out by doing a double date with them, and then he becomes very, like, they encourage him to talk about it, but then he doesn't realize, he's not aware that they have eventually gone bored. They don't want to hear about it anymore. They're nicer to him about it, but his cousin is an asshole about it. Very insensitive jerk about the thing. But yeah, he doesn't get that they're not interested anymore. So that feels like an autistic, that seems like that that is an autistic trait where you become really passionate about something and you're not good with social cues or anything like that. But that's just one trait. I mean, I think there's more to it than that. There are little things about him, but that's not enough proof for it to be confirmed. Like, it's just a few things here and there that, it doesn't prove that I'm right or anything. That's just my suspicions. That's, what I suspect, that maybe Constance Sayers made him to be autistic. Which I could look it up probably, but anyway. There is a little bit of romance that comes in later in the story, which was really sweet. It was a really sweet love story. It does kind of have, I feel like this is great for Autumn because it does kind of have a horror element to it when she gets sucked into the movie. So that was really fun because the guy was making a horror film. So there are horror elements. So I think this is great for Autumn. And I just kept picturing but I think you can read during the summer too because people go to the movies during the summer. People, there was the summer blockbuster. So I feel like this is also good for summer too. So summer and autumn I think are a good time to read this if you're a seasonal reader. I also just got really frustrated with, I liked his aunt. His aunt and uncle were very nice, but his cousins were kind of, assholes. I mean, Christopher does do the asshole move of not realizing that his aunt got sick at one point. He forgets, he's, so distracted and so obsessed with Gemma Turner in this movie that he doesn't pay attention to them. But he does show up for them and make up for it. They weren't patient for him. And I understand their whole live in the real world. But of course, as the reader, we know that Gemma's story is real. But I can kind of understand where his aunt and his cousins are coming from to an extent. That, but I always am on the side of the people, the main character, which I guess you're supposed to be. Where I'm I want them the thing that they're obsessed with, that they're passionate about to be, that they're justified. I mean, if it's something, of course there are some passions, that weird passions that people have that I'm okay, I don't know about that. I don't know if I would agree with you on that. But in this case, this passion, this obsession, this passion, this interest of his, I think there's nothing inherently wrong. I get that he needs to live in the moment, live in the real world, have a life, socialize with people. But I think because I understand where he's coming from as being really passionate about something, I think, I'm kind of on his side. I don't know if I did a review. I might have done a separate, I don't remember if I did a review for this. And if I did do a review, I'm probably repeating myself. But yeah, I love this book. This was so good. I had such a good time with it. Okay, so next is the second book in Wax and Wayne series, Shadows of Self. So, like I said, with this one, we get a lot more of Wax trying to deal with the fact that he's caught between two worlds in a way. So in this one, this one actually does have murder. So there is a mass, let me see, is it a mass slaughter at an auction? And certain people are getting killed. And Wax and Wayne are on the case. They have to figure out what's really going on, who is behind this, because they do learn that it's this mysterious woman that used to be part of a group of people, but she has, now her ideas have changed. Her beliefs have changed. She's realized something. She's come to a certain conclusion and has believed that these people don't deserve to live kind of mentality. These upper class people. She wants to punish them. And so they gotta stop her. But it kind of begs the question, is she justified? Murder is never justified. But you kind of understand where she's coming from and how she got to this point where she believes this way. And she was also part of a group of people that were very all about control, kind of keeping you in check. And Harmony is inside her head. So Harmony is the god of this world, or as if you read Mistborn Era 1, I think you might know who Harmony is. I think. But he is inside her and she did not like that. She felt like he was no better than, like, he was controlling her, so she has rebelled. And it's kind of interesting thinking, because it's like the person that Harmony, because Wax is given away to actually hear Harmony himself and, communicate with Harmony. And so, which I thought that was kind of cool, that he has direct landline to God. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who would love to be able to communicate with God. And she kind of puts him, is Harmony really all that good? Is Harmony all that great? Like, he's a god and everything, you're supposed to worship him, but really, does he deserve your worship? Is he any better than these noble lords? Like, that question is put to Wax. And he kind of has to decide, like, he's put in a very difficult position in this book, because he's got to protect the people, but then maybe this antagonist she is in the right on some level. Which you see that a lot, where I think those are the most interesting villains, is the ones that actually say things that are not necessarily wrong. Like, things that, yeah, they got a good point. They make, you can kind of understand why they think the way they do, and that maybe on some level they are not wrong, that they are justifying their actions just on some level. And I think that the cousin, his fiance's cousin, sorry, I don't remember her name. She is taking a step towards becoming her own person and realizing that her infatuation with Wax is not going to go anywhere, that she can just be friends with him and Wayne. And I think she does enjoy hanging out with them. There's actually a very interesting thing that happens at the end that kind of surprised me. Like, I didn't think I could be surprised, and it was like, oh wow, did not see that coming. It was, again, I love their dynamic. It was Wax and Wayne's dynamic is really fun. The banter between them is very entertaining. His fiance has, was a little more willing to be involved, let Wax do his thing, and is like, because at first, when we first start reading, she's, pushing him to act like a lord, and we gotta go to all these social events and all that, and we gotta look, get involved, because we're, being an engaged couple. But then, at one point, they go to this party, and she's like, okay, what do you gotta do? You need to do your job, so she's actually cool with it. She's willing to help him. And I think she would be a good ally. And, I would love to see in book 3 and 4 if she can get more involved and help him out a little bit. And I like her. I mean, I didn't like her at first. She's kind of annoying in the first book, but she's grown on me a little bit. Like, with her whole planning ahead and always staying organized all the time. And, I mean, at the same time, I kind of understand, like, and actually, she's another character that I have suspicions that she could be autistic coded, because just her planning for things, every little thing, and trying to organize, trying to, like, think ahead for everything. But then again, like I said, it's just one trait. It doesn't mean that she is autistic. There are things better than me. And she's also just kind of awkward. Like, and a lot of times when it comes to socializations, that's, I mean, I wish I could think of a better word, but we're not, autistic people are just not very good with social situations. Especially when we have to do small talk and blend in with everybody else. I mean, some of us are, I think women are a little better at doing that, because we're just, I think, as a gender, we're more social. But yeah, I had fun. I enjoyed this. I'm going to read Bands of Mourning soon. I don't know if October, because it is spooky season and October. Although I haven't read anything spooky yet. I mean, I did start a horror movie by Paul Tremblay. But I was also trying to finish the first book that I finished in October just now, and like last night I finished it. But I did get some books. I wanted to get some more books on my Kindle, but, you know, after talking to my mom about it, she's, you know, suggesting, why don't you get a couple of your books read on your Kindle first before you buy any more? So I was trying to get another one done before I bought any more, and I wanted to get some spooky ones, so I did. So I have spooky ones on my Kindle. But Bands Warning is not spooky. So it wanted to fit the theme. And also it is Victober month, so I don't even know if I'm going to get into any Victorian literature. I did read some Victorian poetry, though, this morning. So I don't know if I'll get to Bands of Mourning, but I want to at least by November. But so that is Shadows of Self. And these are fast reads, by the way. You know, they're very fast paced and fun, and, you know, like, and as I said before, read the Mistborn Era one first before you read this series, because, you know, especially because there are going to be some explanations of the Mistborn powers, like Allomancy and Fruchemi and stuff, and there are mentions throughout the series of the characters from that trilogy. So, I mean, you could still read this series and have fun with it, but enjoy it, but I think there are going to be references that you're not going to get. You might not understand, or the fact that you might not know about the power system, the magic system, that it might ruin that for you, because you'll be so confused. I mean, okay, and then we have, another book that I don't have a physical copy, but I listened to it on audiobook, and actually this one was because one of the Goodreads challenges, I have been trying to do the Goodreads challenges, the new challenges, not the main thing, but they have the new challenges where you read certain books, meet certain themes, and in this case, one of the themes is dark academia, and then there's also Hispanic Heritage Month, and so one of the books which had just come out, and yes, the challenges do basically include, they have books that you have to, that it's their list that they get from Amazon and on Goodreads. It's not, you don't get to read just any book that would qualify for that genre or whatever theme. It has to be from one of those books that they talk about in Goodreads. So yeah, that's kind of annoying. I think a lot of people don't like that about it. But, so Study in Drowning was one of them. I think it's a duology, because I think it's just a duology because there is another book. Well, actually, I think there is a third book, but I don't think it's part of the main story. I think it's just like a prequel kind of thing, I think. But, so in this world, we have there is a college for kids. I mean, the story takes place in this world where Effie, our main character, let me start over. So our main character in this world is Effie, and she has always wanted to go to the literature college, but this world is sexist, and she doesn't get to go. But she does get to apply to the architecture school, and I think she's one of the few girls at the college, and she finds out there's a contest for her favorite author. You can go to his home, and his son is asking people to redesign their home, rebuild their home, because their home is actually his father's home is on a cliff. And way back when, there was a flood in that community where her favorite author lived, where a lot of people died. The previous version of the community that was there drowned and is underwater. And there's this whole thing about you can still hear the bells sometimes and of the church. And there are a lot of the previous generation is kids of the flood, and so and the house is essentially falling apart. But the author is dead, by the way. So she wins the contest and she gets to go. And she's kind of half-assing the situation because she wanted to go to the literature college, and she's also a big fan of this author. And when she gets there, she meets Preston, who's this boy from the literature college, and he was invited by the author's wife, and he's actually from a different part of the country or whatever. He's from like a different community, and there is prejudice between the two communities because where Effie comes from, they're very superstitious. They believe in fairies and magic and all that, while the other side, they're more logical and practical. They don't believe in that kind of stuff. They just think the other side is very silly and superstitious. And he has, even though he's read this author's work and has enjoyed it, he also is suspicious of this author and thinks he might have plagiarized it, that it's not the author's work. And of course, when Effie realizes what his intentions are, that he's trying to exploit it and prove that it isn't, she is not too keen on the idea. But then Preston convinces her to help him with this because she knows more about the author than he does. And that if she works with him, he will not only give her credit, put her name on his paper, but it will also get her into the literature college. So reluctantly she agrees, and it's about them finding out the truth. And things are not, and Preston might not be entirely off with this guy, and that this author, and that he might be shady and he might not be such a great guy. And along the way, Preston and Effie start to fall in love with each other. I actually loved this story. This was so good and warm. Again, warm, very cozy. Like, it had a very intriguing atmosphere. Like, cozy in one second, but also very, like, creepy in another second. Like, the Gother's son was such a, like, there was something icky about him. And he was constantly commenting on Effie and how pretty she was and trying to protect her from Preston, who he was prejudiced against because he was from where Effie was from. And like, I don't trust him, and oh, my mom just invited him, and you hear about the mom, but you don't ever see her. So you're a little suspicious about that. Why is she dead? Is she being kept locked up? What's the deal here with why the mom isn't there? Why they never seen her? Is she sick or something? And so there's a lot of suspicious about that. And but yeah, the author's son, I cannot remember his name, but he was shady and creepy and just, I did not like him. And I mean, which I think you're not supposed to like him. The romance was very sweet. I mean, and now I know the biggest criticism of this book, one of the criticisms I see with this is that they feel like you don't really see Effie grow with her prejudice and no longer be prejudiced. She just falls in love with Preston, sees, oh, he's a good one. But here's the thing, someone, in Reviews on Goodreads, there's a comment section, and someone pointed out, responded to the review, left a comment that was like, well, isn't this realistic? There's a lot of people don't get over their prejudice. If they're ingrained in them, their prejudice don't go away. They might see someone and become friends with someone that is from that group they're prejudiced against and might realize, oh, you're actually a good person. And they might realize, oh, my prejudices are wrong. But Effie doesn't have a moment of, oh my God, these people are just like us. Like, she never really has a moment like that. But she does start to see him in a different way. And it's very subtle, just little things where she starts to seeing him in this way and thinking, oh, maybe I'm a little unfair to him. It's because she falls in love with him. She gets to know him, spends time with him, and that is what happens. I think that's realistic. You get to know someone that happens to be part of a group of people that are prejudiced and realize you might not have this epiphany, or you might, but then you won't change completely. You'll still have your prejudices, and that can potentially ruin a relationship. But this book is not about that. Like, yes, it's included in it, and there is a lot of that, and maybe the author is trying to make a point. I mean, maybe I'm giving the author too much credit. I don't know, but I don't know. Ava Reed, I haven't seen any of her other works before, but I think I'm not going to use this to, change my feelings about the book. I still enjoyed it, and I acknowledge that she was prejudiced. She was probably even more prejudiced than he was. I mean, although, I don't know, maybe it's a little, I feel like it's a little even. But we do see that he doesn't automatically dismiss her concerns, because Effie has anxiety, and you find out in her backstory that the Fairy King had her mom tried to offer her to the Fairy King, but she at the last second changed her mind, and then Effie loses her finger. So she tells that's why this story is so important, because she knows that the Fairy King that is referenced is real. But of course, where Preston comes from, it's not real. And he just is like, well, he does say, well, no, Effie, you probably lost your finger to frostbite. But then eventually he realizes, he checks himself and realizes that, okay, I'm not going to try to argue with her. She just needs me to comfort her and be there for her and understand her. And he doesn't call her crazy, which she really appreciates, because she's been called crazy her whole life, especially because she constantly has these nightmares about the Fairy King coming back. And oh my god, her mom pissed me off. Like, her mom was just so, like, her mom acted like she was such a nuisance, that she was such a bother to her. This is your daughter. She has anxiety. She needs your comfort and help, and not in a, I'm just going to send her to therapy kind of way. She needs you to understand and be there for her. And the mom acts like she's such a burden. Like, granted, I don't have kids. I don't have to take care of someone who has anxiety. I mean, although my dad kind of deals with it a little bit. But he's my dad, so I don't necessarily always have to take care of him. At least not now. I mean, who knows what happens when he's going to get, too old to take care of himself. I might have to. But anyway, it's like, so yeah, I can't entirely understand that feeling of having to take care of someone, especially if they have anxiety or some other, other disorder. But I felt bad for Effie, how she always felt like she was such a burden, such a nuisance. Like, at one point, the book also deals with how gender issues and how women are treated. I mean, there's already the fact that she doesn't get to be she's not technically not allowed in the literature school as a woman. But there's also the fact that she gets sexually assaulted by one of her teachers, one of her professors. And it just gives her such trauma, because of course you're gonna, like, and I don't, I would be traumatized too if I were in her position, because I think that's probably why, because I think I can relate to Effie. Not her experiences, obviously, but just having anxiety and always being anxious and being shy and insecure and everything. Like, I can relate to those feelings, and I think that's why I will defend her character, and just what happened to her, and she's afraid to talk to someone about it and defend herself, and that trauma is always in the back of her mind, that experience, and what she has to deal with. And it's just such a, like, and Preston also has to deal with some issues, and his dad had, I think it was his dad, had drowned, and so he has his own issues, and he is very protective of Effie. He becomes very protective of her. Their relationship is so sweet and so touching. And now I did hear that some bad stuff happens between them, and I know a lot of people, like, I've read reviews about that Effie's character, that she's unhappy and she's miserable in the second book. So I don't know if I'll get to the second book or not. I might just leave it the way it is, because, I mean, it had a great ending, a very satisfying ending in this book. So that is The Study in Drowning. I had a good time with it. I enjoyed that. But yeah, I'm so far had a really great month in September. So the last book is The Ballad of Perilous Graves. I did a review of this one as well, so I'm not going to say a lot, and at least I'm acknowledging that now, so I'll remember not to talk too much about it in this, because you can look at my review for it. This is by Alex Jennings. This was so much fun and whimsical and magical. So this is a fantasy story set in an alternate version of New Orleans, where there are zombies and haints and people have magical gifts. It's very, very whimsical, and like the heart of this place is the songs of this community. Like, and it really highlights how New Orleans is about, like, the heart of New Orleans is its music. That's makes up what this community is, and the different types of music. And in this world, the music takes on a physical form, and the sorcerer, the magician who kind of holds the songs, so that, you know, that he summons our two main characters, Perry and Brenda, these two siblings, and their friend Peaches, who has super strength, to go look for these songs. But what he doesn't know is that the bad guy, it is really dangerous, and the bad guy is a major threat, the guy who stole the songs. So they send him on this adventure that's dangerous, that can get them killed, and they literally are just kids. It's about family and the bonds between sisters and brothers, and how sometimes adults can let you down. I don't know if I talked about that, but adults, they're very wise and they know a lot, but they don't know everything. And sometimes, you know, they can make mistakes and screw up in a big way. And it's a story about growing up. But it's also this whimsical, magical adventure. And I just love this book. I had such a good time with it. I actually, one of the podcasts I listened to, their friend, I think, loved this book as well. So that got me excited hearing someone else have read this book, because I have not heard about this book until I saw it at the thrift store near my sister, a thrift store that sells books. And I found it, and it just sounded so much fun, and I'm glad I read it because it was fun. And like I said, I did a review, so I really hope more people check it out. There's a little tiny bit of romance, but it's not the main thing. It's just kind of puppy love in a way. It's kind of love between kids. You know, two kids is all I'm gonna say. And it really focuses a lot on Black culture, and like I said, the culture of New Orleans, and it's so great. And like I said, please check out my review of this book. Okay, so those are all the books. Those are all the books I read. And then these are the two books I DNF'd. The Stones, The Love of Stones. I think this had a lot of potential, but it was very tedious and too much background talk. Like, there was whole sections in the background. And I just started to get bored after a while. But it was intriguing. It was like these stones of the three brethren that this woman was trying to find. She became obsessed with them. There's also a subplot of two brothers also trying to find the stones in a different time period, I think. They're from a different time period. And it's about their relationship. So it had a lot of great stuff, but it's just the execution was so boring. It was just, yeah, so I would have loved to keep going, but I just couldn't. I was bored. I couldn't go on because it was just like they were taking too long to get to the cool stuff. And I wanted to read other stuff. I was more interested in other books. And I think it's okay. You know, I mean, yeah, there are some books that you shouldn't give up. Or you could just put down it's soft DNF. I mean, I'm not a big fan of that. Like, when I DNF a book, I'm not coming back to it unless it's like, I mean, well, that's not entirely true, because there are a lot of books, especially 500 plus page books, where I put them down for a while. So I don't know if maybe you consider those soft DNFs, but those ones I always intend to come back to. So if you consider those soft DNFs, then yeah, I guess I do soft DNF, but this is not one of those cases. I'm gonna let it go. See, maybe someone else would be more interested in this than I would. And then we have The Scarlet Letter. Most people probably know about this. This takes place in a Puritan town where Hester Prynne, she has an adulterous affair, and she does not reveal him, the guy who she had an affair with and got her pregnant, but she does. But there results in consequences for her, where she's ostracized from the community and has to wear a red letter A. And it is made worse in the community's eyes because she keeps her baby and watches it grow up. And it's basically her story and the tragedy. I mean, I think it does explore some interesting themes of ostracization, how society can immediately jump on you. And I think, in a way, it is relevant because we do that online. We ostracize people online. We're very, like, we attack people. We have cancel culture now where people make, there are some really big mistakes, and there's people that make little mistakes where they come off as insensitive, but we just cancel them, especially when they're celebrities. So, but on the social media culture is very all about ostracizing people when they don't like what they have to say, when they don't agree with their opinions. So I think this can be relevant. But it's a little slow and some of the language, the way people speak is hard to read because it's very old and very Puritan. And I know that the Hawthorne did on purpose, or it was written in a time period where people spoke that way, and I understand that, but that doesn't change how I feel about it. Like, that doesn't mean that just because, oh, well, that's who it is, all of a sudden I'm gonna be like, okay, I love the book. Like, I don't get when people are, like, I understand, like, there's the temptation to tell, well, you're missing the point. I personally don't love that, but there are times, but maybe I'm a little bit of a hypocrite because there are times when I do feel like, well, actually, that's how it is. But I'm also not going to hate on that person either. So really I should say that, yeah, there may be things where I feel like the person is missing the point, but that doesn't mean that, oh, well, that's the only reason why you don't like it, because you're just not getting it. Like, I don't think that's the case. I think sometimes some messages don't work for people, or some themes or storytelling just doesn't work for everybody. And just because now it gets explained to you doesn't mean that they're going to all of a sudden change their minds. I mean, I don't get people's response where they're like, well, don't you understand? This is the theme of the book, and, they're trying to give you this important message, and, like, you're not going to get the person to change their minds all of a sudden. You're just going to annoy them, because they feel like they're getting lectured. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot, like, I know that what got me to want to give this book another shot was because of, Olive from a Book Olive actually said was she actually liked it. She was surprised that she liked it, but she did. And, that's great for her. Like, I'm glad that she actually liked it. I attempted to read it and I didn't like it. And, people might think I gave it too quickly. But, sometimes there are so many books to read. I mean, I already feel some anxiety about how I'm never going to read all the books I want to read. And how, like, I'm 36 now. And I'm already feeling that feeling of, oh, I hope I can read all my books. And, I mean, I'm already anxiety about what's going to happen when I die, but the fact, how many books I read is the present issue, is an issue that I can deal with now. So, yeah, I think if you're just not feeling a book, don't waste your time. Like, if you want to read it later, then yeah, you can come back to it later. But I have no interest in reading this later and attempting this again. And plus, if I didn't want to, I know it's available on Libby. So those are my DNFs. I'm currently reading, like I said, this is the Victorian poetry I started. Because I already started it a while back. But I decided to go ahead and read some of them today. This is the Bronte sisters, their poetry. So that's kind of the closest to Victorian literature I'm going to get. At least for now. I mean, you never know. I might. But also, I started my reread of Peace and Turmoil by Elliot Brooks because she posted an update video where she talked about what she's currently reading, but also she kind of gave us news on her sequel. She was unable to write it before, so finally she's able to work on it now. She was able to work on it, and the digital copy is available, and so is the audiobook, but I have this physical copy of the first book, Peace and Turmoil, so I wanted the sequel as a physical paperback copy. And luckily, and the good news is she actually has to put on paperback first. So I'm happy about that. But anyway, I remember liking it the first time, and I think that my review the first time I read it wasn't as good, so I'm starting over, and I decided to, and I already planned to reread it, I just hadn't gotten the motivation yet, so I'm finally rereading it, and I'm gonna attempt a new review. And I know a lot of people will, there might be people that will like my review of the first book and think, oh, nothing's wrong with it, but even if you say that, I'm still gonna do it anyway. So, I mean, I appreciate it if you guys thought my review was okay, alright, was fine already, but I'm gonna reread it anyway and re-review it, so. Okay, so the current ones I'm focused on are, I'm working on Babel by R.F. Kuang. Really loving it. I'm loving his exploration of language and colonization. And I just love, like, I know a lot of people love Dark Academia for the darkness and the messy relationships. But one of the things that pulls me in is the academia part. I love academics and seeing these people go to school and learn about subjects that I didn't get to learn. Like, they're studying language. They're so smart and know all these languages. They're studying words and the meanings of words and its importance, and that is just so cool. I wish I could do that, but it would be so hard for me to learn this. Like, I don't, and just all those scenes when they're in school and studying hard, getting anxious about the final exams, and just, and combined with the fact that there are people from these foreign countries that are being allowed to study because England wants a relationship with these countries, but there's all this prejudice against them, this hatred towards them, such rude comments to these people, these kids. So they're so disgusting. Like, thinking one of, Robin Swift is his friend. Robin Swift is the main character. He's from China, and his friend is from Calcutta, India, and these people are like, are you dirty? Or, they assume that he's dirty, that he's unclean, literally, and it's just so, like, I want to smack, like, I want to be like, what is wrong with you? And there's one girl that she lived in France and she's a black girl, and there's all this racism towards her, and that, Robin looks white, so he doesn't experience much. He still experiences in these people asking these dumb questions and only caring about the fact that he's from China. But Rami, and I'm going to call her Victoria. I can't say how her name is actually spelled, but there's people assume things about them, and are like, the last thing I read was they were going to the ball that the school host, and when they get there, they assume that Rami and Victoria are serving, that they're the servants. They make these assumptions about them, or like these gross commentaries, things that they just assume about the girls, because there are two girls in the group, and it's just like, it makes you so angry. But then at the same time, parallel to this, all their learning and the education and being at the school and this experience, and you want to live vicariously through. I'm living vicariously through these characters. I mean, unfortunately, I would not want to have to experience the racism that they experienced and the disgusting responses to them, but just them going to Oxford and studying. And hopefully, if I ever get to go back to England, I would love to go to Oxford and explore that town, and go to the college, tour the college and everything. It would be so much fun. But yeah, so I'm obviously really enjoying this. And I did start a horror movie by Paul Tremblay. So this is basically, there's this infamous horror movie that was made in the 90s, and that it has a cult following because it was never finished, but a lot of scenes from that movie got uploaded to the internet, and is a very indie film. And so in the modern day, the only one who's still alive who was known as, he played a character called the Thin Kid, he's approached because they want to reboot, do a remake of that movie. So they ask him to get involved. And he's recalling his experience. It's a bit of a multimedia story because, you know, you have the, like scripts. You know, you have going back and forth between the past when they were first making the film and then the present day where they're kind of trying to bring the film back. But also, what's really cool is that you get the script of the original movie. I think that's really the script of those scenes, the original movie throughout the book as well. I think in my particular edition, the one I found has like the colored pages, and so I think that was lucky that I got one of those, because I could never get those books because they're, they most of the time come in boxes, or you have to get special editions and you have to order them online and they're so expensive. And so I definitely have mixed feelings with the where now a lot of people have basically will paint just regular books will have painted edges. Because on the one hand, I think it's really cool. I always wanted one, and the average person can get one. But now, at the same time, it's all of a sudden every book has something like that. And it's like, it's no longer a special thing anymore. So I definitely have mixed feelings about that. So yeah, this makes me excited that I was able to get a particular version of this book like this. But at the same time, I'm like, if I got more books like that, then it's like, it's not special anymore. It's like basically capitalism at its best. When they're taking advantage of something and be like, oh, we're going to do this for the average buyer that won't get our book boxes, but we're going to do it to every single book. But anyway, so obviously I haven't got very far. I might read a little bit of this because I did start reading Babel again, but I was, wanted to film my wrap up. So, but I did read a little bit more of Babel today. And unfortunately, I wasted time this morning when I could have got more reading done because we ended up going on the putting green because I was finally able to get back on it because my dad he had a knee replacement, so we were not able to go on the putting. And my mom doesn't really golf, so she wasn't going to take me, but we finally went today. But anyway, I was sidetracked by the fact that my iPod storage is full. So, and then it turns out that possibly my podcasts are the problem. But I still want to listen to podcasts. I love listening to podcasts. I want to listen to them. So I don't want to get rid of, I don't want to get rid of the podcast app and then reinstall it because I want to listen to it. So it's annoying that is the only solution people can tell me. So I'm just kind of going through my device and trying to get rid of stuff like that I don't need on there, finding ways around that. But anyway, when a problem like that happens, I become obsessed with trying to resolve it in some way, trying to figure out the solution, and then I end up wasting all my time focused on that. So yeah, I did not get I didn't get a lot of reading done this morning. I didn't get any reading done this morning. I read a little bit before we left to go to the putting green. But, I didn't read a lot. I just finished the chapter, So yeah, I have not got, but the good news is at least this time I have 2 more days after today off, and then I go back to work, so. And actually, we plan, I might have more days off coming up soon. So, we will see. But anyway, so that's my wrap up and kind of a little update on my reading, where I'm my current reads. And I hope you guys enjoyed this wrap up. And I love to know what you read in August or September. Do you guys do wrap ups? Like, if you have a channel, do you do wrap ups? Most people do, but some people haven't done them. Because, it's the old book version of being a booktuber. Now we're all doing, like, vlogs and or doing video essays and stuff. But I still maintain this version, obviously, as you guys have seen. So I hope you enjoyed your reading, and I will talk to y'all later. All right, bye.